Biden's student loans. The Supreme Court knocked down Biden's loans, and recently Biden's been trying to figure out another way kind of to pull them through his administration. We're going to start with James. James, do you agree or disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling on the student loan relief of $400 billion that would affect millions of people?
Oh, I definitely agree with the Supreme Court. He was already adjudicated that he exceeded his authority, and now he's sort of circumventing the Supreme Court by trying to do a end around their decision. It's just not fair to all those millions of people who paid their loans in the past, who worked hard, who worked their way through college. He euphemistically calls this forgiveness. He's not forgiving anything. What he's doing is he's transferring this debt onto the American people. I heard figures as high as $500 billion over the next 10 years. It's unfair and it's outrageous.
So, Chris, I mean, what are your thoughts on the student loan relief that the Supreme Court knocked down?
Yeah, so I read about this a little bit. So I think the Supreme Court itself probably made a call that it was able to make. Like it seems like, the president didn't necessarily have the authority to make this, do the forgiveness. But in principle, and morally, let's say, I think the forgiveness was due, like it's necessary. Basically, I think
so you're in support of...
Yeah, absolutely. I think the U.S. has to invest in more education, and we can't tell people you have to go to college, and in order to work in roles that are necessary for the country, like teachers and social workers, and then load them with student debt at a rate that they weren't expecting, and making less money than they were expecting, not being able to pay them.
I mean, what about people who took out arts degrees that took out $100,000 in loans and probably chose professions that are not even going to match that kind of, what are your thoughts there? I mean, do you think taxpayers, this should be, being passed on to the taxpayers to bail them out of their loan?
Well, I mean, two things. One thing is that most people, I think, have a debt that's around, on average, I think the debt is about maybe $39,000. Okay. So it's much less than the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're saying. And it's true that arts degrees are not as important as being a social worker or a teacher, but they're still, the artistic production of the U.S. is one of the greatest strengths of the country, right? So to stifle it, because you don't want to support education in these fields is against the benefit of the country. So I would say that, I mean, there's an argument to be made that all these things have to be supported. Maybe the form of student debt forgiveness, the way Biden did it was not the best way, but something of this sort needs to be done, because these people are fulfilling essential needs, and they're suffering. And presumably they're taking money out of the assets of their families, and preventing their family members from going to college. Maybe some of their family members are dying because they have to give up insurance because they have to give the money to the person who has to pay their debts.
So,
So, I mean, these people need help. So,
yeah, I mean, Republicans have claimed that Biden was trying to use this to buy votes. So, James, what are your thoughts on that argument that this was being used to buy Democratic votes?
Oh, absolutely. He's doing this to curry favor with young people. Let's remember also, where does this end? Do people suffer, let's say they have mortgages that are stifling? Does the government step in and pay for the mortgage? Credit card debt, does the government come in and pay that? I mean, where does this end? I mean, people have to be responsible. You're creating a moral hazard, and I think people will be less mindful of the majors that they're taking. If the government's going to pay for it, well, you know what, I'll study art history or something that's not going to provide me with a job when I graduate. So I think people need to be responsible, and every time government steps in and does something like that, I think what you're doing is you're creating a moral hazard, and people are going to be less prudent in the things that they study, the majors that they get their degrees on. It just doesn't work, And I think hopefully the voters will see this and will not vote for Biden because of this scam that he's trying to pull.
I mean, Chris, what do you say about the fact that Republicans say that this was a way for Biden to buy votes?
I mean, education needs to be addressed. And
so you find that education is a valuable thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, is this a way to address the root cause? Because
it's not the perfect way, but it's a good way.
I mean, I believe the court ruled that, Congress, that Biden couldn't do this with an executive order, which is kind of what he tried doing. And I know Nancy Pelosi had mentioned that he couldn't do it with the executive order, and then he went ahead and did it through an executive order.
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
So, and, I do think both parties should kind of agree if this is something to push through. I mean, I'm someone who has student loans, and I've been paying them, and I'm someone who paid for my education, so I am not necessarily for this personally as someone that's taken responsibility for it. But I do understand, that people do get into a lot of debt. Especially while getting my master's degree, there's not a lot of availability for aid. So, and there's the argument that people with higher educational degrees have statistics shows that they make higher salaries than those that don't. And is it fair that we're bailing them out? And there are people who didn't go to college and are probably making a more average salary. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Chris? I mean, is that fair that taxpayers should be bailing them out? And
I mean, I again, sorry, maybe I'm simplifying the matter too much, but education is important, and we need higher and higher education in the country as time goes on. It's a competitive advantage in the world. Like, other countries have higher education rates than the U.S., and the investment has to be made in these things. And not every educated job has a high salary, especially teachers and social workers, I would say. So,
no, I agree with you. I think that everyone should have access to education, and money and economics should not deter you from having access. Maybe the solution to this problem is that, city and state universities should be for free. Maybe that's a way to get to that. But, there are private institutions that can cost up to $250,000 for an undergrad degree. And sometimes people don't take into consideration these things and get into, huge debts without really, thinking about it. Thank you for watching the clip. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also stay tuned for more In the Can with Carmella Cann.